In 1989, Ayatollah Khomenei called for the execution of Salman Rushdie in London for the crime of writing a blasphemous book.
Do you understand that we do not regard it as civilized to kill people for their opinions?
Well, you may have different versions of defining civilization.
The Muslim Brotherhood is a transnational Islamist movement founded in Egypt in the 1920s. Its aim is to organize society around Sharia law. Everywhere it has pursued political influence, it has done so by terror and subversion, and everywhere it has taken power, the death toll has been catastrophic. In the West, it is in no elected politician's interest to tackle a problem that the public hasn't actually noticed. Islamic infiltration is a can of worms which for decades our leaders have tried not to open. But even government departments can't keep a lid on this situation forever. In May last year, a confidential 73-page report from the French Ministry of Interior was leaked to Le Figaro, a major French newspaper. It was titled "The Muslim Brotherhood and Political Islam in France." The report detailed how a structured Islamist movement linked to the Muslim Brotherhood is pursuing a long-term strategy of influence in France using institutional leverage outside the formal structures of state power. Their civic foundations, charities, lobbying groups, municipal networks, youth associations, and religious organizations are all becoming so indispensable to public life that their demands cannot be denied by elected leaders. It's not the first report of its type, but this one was significant because it came from a government department. And although President Macron personally intervened to try and stop its publication, the cat is out of the bag, and this will be much harder to dismiss in the usual way. What is the usual way, you ask? Well, in 2010, a similar report named Sharia, The Threat to America, alleged similar things about Islamic infiltration in the United States. This report came from the Center for Security Policy, which is a think tank. It's the same think tank which guided Senator Ted Cruz in designating the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. The radical leftist Southern Poverty Law Center has designated the Center for Security Policy a hate group. It's worth examining how they came to this radical conclusion.
Resist it while you still can, and before the right to complain is taken away from you, which will be the next thing. You will be told you can't complain because you're Islamophobic. The term is already being introduced into the culture as if it was an accusation of race hatred.
So the way they came to this conclusion is via a pressure group called the Islamophobia Network, which attempted to debunk the Center for Security Policy's report by exposing, of all things, the funding network behind the Center for Security Policy. These revenue sources were simply American foundations and private donors. There was actually nothing to see there. But if you want to know what Islamist pressure groups are guilty of, see what they blame others for first. This is a commonly known propaganda tactic called accusation in a mirror. Always blame your enemies that of which you yourself are guilty of. Despite the Islamophobia Network's complete failure to debunk the facts of the CSP report, their accusations of bias were amplified and quoted by organizations such as CAIR, which is closely associated with the Islamic Association for Palestine, via its director Nihad Awad, who was the public relations director for the Islamic Association for Palestine before co-founding CAIR in 1994. The Bridge Initiative, funded by Prince Al-Walid bin Talal's Center for Muslim-Christian Understanding, then circulated the allegations against the CSP in a paper called The Global Muslim Brotherhood Conspiracy Theory, which denies rather than debunks the idea that political Islam is slowly but surely creeping into America. Perhaps the worst aspect of Islamic infiltration, completely unmentioned in all of these official reports, is not the violence and subversion of political Islam, but the cultural inability to form a proper defense that comes with it. The accusation of Islamophobia and hatred is repeated in every democracy where political Islamism takes hold, and every society where people push back. That's why it's no wonder that President Macron tried to obstruct his own ministry's report on the matter. Last time he dared to speak up about the crisis of Islamization in France, Foreign Policy magazine accused him of pandering to the far right. Canadians United Against Hate complained that Quebec's secularism law, which forbids the expression of any religion while serving in a public fronting role, primarily targets Muslims. And leftist groups like the DSA continually attempt to misrepresent Islamophobia as a racial grievance. However insulting this may be to African Christians who are currently being slaughtered by the Muslim Brotherhood in, for example, Nigeria or in Sudan. Fully fledged Islamic republics are perfectly open about how they intend to use the freedom of Western secular society to advance their caliphate into the West. In 1990, the Ayatollah Khomenei called for the execution of Salman Rushdie in London for the crime of writing a blasphemous book. Iranian diplomats in Britain were adamant that his death sentence was simply an expression of free speech. Here is Iranian ambassador to London talking about this matter.
Do you understand that we do not regard it as civilized to kill people for their opinions?
Well, you may have different versions of defining civilization.
Rushdie then fled to America and spent the last 35 years or so lying fairly low, although as Islamism creeps across the Atlantic, his security situation has deteriorated there too. In 2022, he was stabbed by a New Jersey Islamist and lost an eye. He's since been seen walking around with an eye patch ever since. The more entrenched the Islamic infiltration, the stronger the political efforts to appease them. Europe is much further gone than America. The Forum of European Muslim Youth and Student Organizations, or FEMYSO, has reportedly received 6.75 million euros from the Islamic Development Bank, alongside substantial Qatari funding since 2016. This is the same radical Islamist Qatar, by the way, which stuffed at least 1.5 million euros that we know of, into the pockets of senior European politicians to bribe them to keep quiet about Europe's compliance with their human rights abuses. And that's the same European Union which also funds FEMYSO, as well as other organizations accused of proximity to Islamist networks, to Hamas proxies, and anti-Semitic and anti-Israeli terrorist groups through its various programs. So it's hardly surprising when you consider how easily their senior elected politicians can be bought by foreign and domestic cash. And then look at Britain, which has absorbed more foreign migration in the last 20 years than it has in the previous 2000, skewing the national profile towards political Islam in its most extreme forms. When the Ayatollah Khomenei issued a fatwa sentencing a British author, Salman Rushdie, to death for blasphemy, Islamists didn't need much encouragement.
He's a devil, the true devil himself come to life. We are true Muslims, and you are true Christians. You will do the same as we are going to do.
Were these people ever even investigated? Were their views even condemned?
I saw Imam Khomeini. He became a hero to me overnight. Endeared him immediately to millions of Muslims the world over, including myself.
You might think that this man's open support for domestic terrorism would end badly for him and his mates. Well, not a bit of it. Long after Salman Rushdie has fled to America, Bunglawala was given formal advisory role to the UK Home Office on, wait for it, how to tackle extremism in the UK. His sage views are regularly aired on television and published in the Guardian newspaper even today. The suicidal empathy of the left, as well as the fear of losing the Islamic sectarian voting bloc, has left our governments and our politicians and leaders cornered and unable to actually condemn anyone but those who point to the problem.
But we will act decisively against hatred. We will use the full force of the law when that hatred manifests as violence. And we will ban those coming into the UK who seek to stir it up, as we have done already.
The accusation of Islamophobia by people who are too terrified to stand up to the Islamic threat is beginning to wear the British people down. Speaking up on this issue is so dangerous that more people are now in prison in the UK for things they have written online than in Russia. Putin's Russia. These governments publicly condemn extremism while simultaneously subsidizing activist ecosystems and foreign influence structures that thrive under the protection of anti-Islamophobia rhetoric. The irony is that while our Western pseudo-intellectual classes continue to pretend that the danger does not exist, our friends and allies in the Muslim world are very well aware of the dangers of political Islam and are continuously warning us about it all the time.
There will come a day that we will see far more radical extremists and terrorists coming out of Europe because of lack of decision-making, trying to be politically correct, or assuming that they know the Middle East and they know Islam and they know the others far better than we do. And I'm sorry, but that's pure ignorance.
Islamism is a political ideology which justifies dictatorship, violence, invasion, rape, and total destruction of other cultures in order to create a global regime of Sharia law which Islamists believe they have a divine mandate to impose. From the first expansion of the caliphate across North Africa to the slaughter of Iranian dissidents today, Islamists have shown that they don't comprehend borders, don't respect peaceful Muslims, and will use the free discourse and fair legal systems of the West to subvert, dominate, and destroy the free world. We are badly equipped to deal with what is coming, and worse, we are already governed by the people who are pushing it on us.